Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our patrons who kept us going for over 400 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Stealthy Goats.
Yeah, I saw that name. It's a long time, dude. I've seen him around
For a while.
Not just here, but in chats and stuff.
Also said he loves me. And I'm a weak man.
Oh, he's playing straight to your heart.
Yeah, flattery will get you everywhere with me. But we also have a sponsor to thank, and we're deep into free ball fall now, right?
Free ball fall.
Yeah, free ball fall starts in September 21st, something fall. When does fall officially start?
September 21st.
The wind's picking up, allergies are in the air. But of course, we're talking about our sponsor, Manscape. Now, we've started with the Lawnmower 4.0. We like that thing. Pretty good. We've got a light. It's waterproof. Then they came out with the Beard Hedger Pro. We really like this thing. But then they came out with a thing that I never in my life, never once have I ever thought that's for me. And I'm talking about the Handyman, which is this neat little package. So rechargeable
Handyman. So here's the thing.
Shaver.
Now, the thing about this is that, like, hey, if you're an on-the-go kind of person, if you're a portable gamer, like this, like you enjoy your Switch a lot, they actually have something that's way more compact, looks almost like a battery pack for the Sega Nomad
and has a better battery life than the Switch.
Well, everything. Yeah, that's, of course, USB-C, which comes with it, of course. And, or it looks like the Game Gear battery charger pack, if anyone remembers that thing. Actually, it's smaller than that.
Also water-resistant.
Water resistant, no bigger than a stick of deodorant.
Okay, so here's the thing, though. It's like I've had a beard, I think, since I was like 20, 21. I've had a beard. I haven't really shaved. I think the last time I shaved was like 2017. Like, I've had a short beard or a long beard for years. And I was like, well, I don't, like, how am I going to talk about this? So I used it. Now, granted, we were supposed to record on Tuesday, so I used it on Tuesday. This is now a day or so of growth because I used it again yesterday. The first time, there's a little bit of a learning curve here for anybody that decides to get this. And genuinely, it's smooth. Like, it's as good as a razor. I know that sounds insane because I was thinking of the 90s, like, lint remover type. If you got anybody who's old enough to remember that shit, like your dad had one and it looks like a lint remover. You got to like press in and it's all around. It looks like a bet. This is not that. This is like, you don't have to press. If you press, it'll get real close. You just like kind of hold it against your face and run it up and down. And it's got one blade that gets the longer on the upswing. And then it gets it like crazy smooth on the downswing. The
great thing about this is that it's giving you a real close shave on the go in a tiny compact package.
Right. No shaving cream.
No shaving cream. It's easy to clean. So yeah, if you're one of those people like who suffers like I do with neck hair, this will be a little godsend because now you can go anywhere, your family, your friends, trips, holidays, whatever, and you can take care of that really annoying neck hair as it comes in with this.
If you like to be clean shaven, you don't do a beard. The Beard Hedger Pro we've been talking about forever. You're like, well, I don't do a beard. I don't do. This is pretty great. I did not expect to like it. I've now used it a couple days in a row, and it is so easy. It's really easy. It's loud. Like, that's, if I was going to give it like some sort of con, like the first time you turn it on, it shocks you how like powerful it sounds, but it works. And it's really easy to clean too, by the way. You just like pop this off and all your stubble and stuff falls right out. Like, it's, I don't know.
All that really annoying neck hair, but yeah. So
like,
if you're interested, of course,
Yeah,
working.
head over to manscape.com. Use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. That's code YoVG at manscape.com for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. Your balls and now your chin will thank you.
And my neck.
And your neck. It is also good for that. All right, so there hasn't been crazy news. There's been a little bit of stuff that's going to be for side quests. Like there's a couple of things we want to talk about on a side quest.
Then
And
I need to talk about it with language I can't really use here.
Right,
So if you're interested in side quests, head over to what's on the Patreon. You can subscribe for any amount you want.
There's 48 of them now.
Yeah, but like a lot of places are really cracking down hard on even just swearing. I got hit really hard last month, real bad. So it's made my work output like slow to a crawl because now I have to spend about 4 to 5 times as long editing stuff for swear words.
Noticed, podcast, we've been cutting back on swearing, been cutting back on some of the more egregious dick jokes.
so yeah, if you want to hear my unfiltered, uncompromised, mouth, you want to hear the words coming out of it like uncompromised, head on over to the Patreon.
Throw a buck.
Yeah, any amount will do, and then you get access to all of it. And yeah, we'll have, because they're like 10 to 15 minute like side content.
Some of them are up to a full hour, believe it or not. It's literally just episodes where we talk about exactly what's happening. Usually, right? And this week's side quest is going to be about revitalizing zombie games, and also one about the layoffs. That will be.
Yeah, I just want to say Hydro Flasks are amazing. This thing was sitting in the sun and it's boiling hot, and I open it up and it's cold as Snapple in there.
You're 5 years behind. Everybody's on that. I've moved on to just straight up Nalgene bottles, man. But for the episode, you've been playing Lies of P. You like it a lot. I had forgotten it was coming. Nobody talked about it.
It's on Game Pass.
It is on Game Pass. You're not. It's a Soulsborne.
It's a Soulsborne, and I'm not really a Soulsborne guy. Not really at all.
I'm kind of shocked that you like it as much as you do.
Granted, because parries.
Because of parries, yeah.
Parries are God, and they make sense. There's not this thing where like there are multiple types of parries in the game. So if you want that really stupid parry where he has to go like,
yeah,
and you press a button, and then like 3 seconds later, when he's at this stage with his arm in front of him, that's the parry window. But it has like 3 seconds of warm up. No. It has instant parries, regular instant parries, and everything is parryable. You parry everything in the game. There are some command grabs, I guess you can't parry, but they've got dodge rolling and all that stuff as well. But like, it just, the fact that it is like it's completely designed around the fact you can walk up to a boss, and if you just know his timing, you can beat every boss and never get hit. And you don't even have to move. You just have to like be real darn good at parrying. It's almost like it gets like you almost get like a punch out kind of feeling almost. Really? With like, you see them going like, oh, he's gonna do the right, left, right, and then I'm gonna like 1, 2, 3, parry all that stuff. And then like if you parry super well, their life bar like highlights in like this big white glow, and it starts to glow. And that means if you do a heavy attack on them, you'll stun them. And then when you stun them, you can do like a big killing move on them, do a bunch of big damage. So it's just kind of like you just sit there and like, okay, boom, 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 boom. I made you stagger, hit you hard once, and then I get a freebie hit, and I do like a ton of damage and stuff.
So it's got really clean combat, which is generally
clean combat. That's actually probably the best. That's the good way to describe it. Very clean combat. So
is it also the story, or is it like
the story's cool? I actually really like the story. It's way more straightforward. Like it still has like the crypticness a bit of the Souls. Like it's especially early on. Like you don't really know what's going on or whatever. But then like they kind of drip feed you more. But there's like full on cutscenes, and you can go and full on talk to characters who are kind of like, oh yeah, like, and they'll reveal like full information to you and stuff. So it's great actually in that sense. It's definitely more straightforward. You don't have to like troll through item descriptions, though they are there, and you don't have to like wait for someone on YouTube to
Okay.
basically spend a month deciphering stuff and putting it all together in a compilation video. No, you don't. You're going to get the story playing the game.
So is it open world like the latest Soulsborne entries, or is it
No, okay, it's
linear?
still it's much more linear, but it does loop around.
Okay.
Like the areas do connect, one after the other for the most part, and they do eventually like, link back to like some point, like they do come like complete a circuit, but like it's more straightforward.
And everybody by now knows that it's Pinocchio, but how Pinocchio is it? Like, obviously, the original story of Pinocchio is pretty dark. It's not going to be like the Disney Pinocchio,
No,
but
no.
although that would be funny. Is it sort of like you're in the circus area? You're
There
in
is
the
there is a circus has come to town stuff, and like you fight.
okay.
So okay, here's I don't want to give too much away because kind of like it's almost too good to give away some of the stuff.
Okay. Well, all right, then you don't got to give anything away.
The setting of the game is a city called Krot,
Okay.
and it's turn of the century style.
A
So
city
there's
called Crotch.
Krot.
I know. I was...
So it's got like this vaguely Eastern European type of city, and they're having the grand exhibition. Now this city is basically been pretty much more or less destroyed because the city became famous for the puppets. People created these automatons that basically did everything, and they were so good at, the automatons were so good. They used them for butlers, for chimney sweeps. They started just using them for police force.
And they got too
Forever.
near.
They one day went crazy and they started killing everyone. They called it the puppet frenzy. So all the puppets are on a murderous rampage.
This is very cool, but I feel like Yoko Taro needs to.
You there's some parts where you're like, what the heck? And like this, some parts hit so close to home on that. But the fun part is like everyone's like there are some puppets that didn't, and they're like, I don't understand. Like they call them the Grand Covenant. There's the 3 laws of the Grand Covenant. So they're heavily referencing Isaac Asimov. About like, there's these 3 there's the 3 laws of the Grand Covenant that puppets are never supposed to break, which is killing, endangering, harming a human, or doing anything that would lead to harming a human. So that's going on, and then you find out there was a disease epidemic running through the city as well, called the petrification disease, which basically just like rots you to stone. But you get further in, and then you find out there's another thing that can happen besides that, besides just turning to stone.
So it's grim dark fantasy.
Very grim dark, but
Okay.
it's turn of the century. You're at the grand exhibition. It's like zeppelins and trolleys and trains.
I do love that. So it's steampunky too.
Yeah, that kind of
Love that.
aesthetic. Not like hyper steampunk,
No.
where like gears and clocks everywhere kind of thing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
more like, okay, what would cities are built of steel and glass, like everywhere. Like a lot of the building, like Grand Exhibition Hall, the Grand Central Station
Okay.
kind of architecture. But then you go to like impoverished areas for like shacks in the woods kind of thing. There's a big cathedral kind of stuff as well. There's a really cool, I was really kind of upset when I saw this come up as a, because like it was basically like hinted at. I'm like, oh God, please no. They're like barren swamp, and I'm like, no. But like it's not necessarily great, but it's like, oh, they had this thing where it was a landfill. It was a barren swamp, and they use it as a landfill for all the basically any like out of use puppet. They would just start illegally doing it, and the city just didn't care. They had too many bigger fish to fry. And there's just piles, just like mountains of just like puppet corpses there and stuff. And then yeah, like it goes into things. There was a fun thing though. There's a fun thing. And this could be spoilery. I don't actually know, because in one of the in the sort of like rougher neighborhood, I found a portrait that was stolen by this Black Rabbit gang. And the portrait looked identical to me, to Pinocchio, but it was of a human. And I took it back home or I took it to the hotel, your home base. And he's like, "Oh," I was like, "I remember this painting. Like, I thought it was gone. I didn't know they stole it." He's like, I know where to hang," and he hangs it up or whatever, right? And then like throughout the game, you'll get choices, you get dialogue options, and it's always about whether or not you're telling someone the truth. And so when you lie, you go back into the room and there's this wooden thing growing off the nose in the portrait. Like the more you lie, like it doesn't, like your nose doesn't physically grow, but like a portrait of you starts doing it. And then so I
Very
talked to
Dorian Gray.
So I talked to Geppetto about it, and he's like, "I knew a man once, D. Gray. He was trying to transpose his souls into portraits. So like he literally name dropped it as if he was a real person, and he met and knew this man named D. Gray, and he was talking about like he was trying to achieve immortality through transposing a soul into a painting." Which I immediately got. I was like, "Oh, I know what that's about." And I'm like, and I had to tell, like, there's definitely a bunch of people like, "So you guys may not know this, but there's this book called The
Yeah.
Portrait of Dorian Gray," which kind of, I guess, springboards the whole conversation here, which is like, what other classic literature would make for a really cool, interesting setting in a video game?
Yeah, I feel like there's obvious ones, right? Like you could very easily do a good Treasure Island game. Like
Mm,
it's right there, you know?
yeah,
Um and I know that the concern would be like, well, they're not on the island for very long, but you could pack in and extend the island. You could make the island the entire game.
yeah.
Um
Well,
yeah,
you could be Ben Gunn, who was maroon
right.
there.
You
You
could,
know,
yeah. Um I mean, I think it'd be a lot of fun if you don't immediately know where on the island the money is, and like
hmm
you're Jim Hawkinson, like the betrayal that happens.
yeah.
Um, I don't know why I'm acting like there's spoilers. There can't be anybody that doesn't know the story of Treasure Island, I guess.
I mean, you'd hope.
But Treasure Island would be a really fun one. I think there's a lot of grim fairy tales that would be very good.
Hmm
You know, the way we look at those fairy tales now because of Disney, we lose a lot of the adventure to it because adventure is supposed to be scary in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
There is supposed to be some terror to it, and like so many Grimm's fairy tales are downright scary. You know,
hmm
like this
And
is
that's
this
kind of
is
the
a
point.
stretch, but
The
like a
point was to
Hansel and
scare,
Gretel.
right? And the point was to sort of scare kids into being good or whatever.
Yeah,
Fear was a motivating factor in these tales.
right. Yeah, don't be a shit. Um, but yeah, so do you have one that you're like, this is the one, this is really good?
I think here's a weird one. I think Shakespeare is prime for this stuff. Um,
Mm, okay. It's
because
been adapted a lot, yeah.
you know what's the word? What's the one you can't say the name of it if you work on it? Is it King Lear? Um,
Oh,
or
with
is
the curse that yeah, you
yeah,
break a leg if you
yeah. But you could do stuff like that because like Gargoyles, the TV show in the '90s, kind of did this where like they started like mass adapting a bunch of like stuff from Shakespeare
right.
for it. So
Well,
the
anybody who thinks Shakespeare's too out of it, I mean, like Hamlet's got to be one of the most adapted storylines ever. What's Sons of Anarchy is just Hamlet.
oh
Like
yeah,
it's just
is
an
that where it
adaptation
went?
of Hamlet.
Ah,
Uh yeah, so basically the first season of Sons of Anarchy is the main character, his stepfather and his mother are running this like empire after his dad has died, this like
mm,
biker gang. And then he finds his dad's memoirs in an old storage unit, his ghost, right?
yeah.
The memoir starts talking about how if he's dead, it's the stepfather who killed him. And so sends the main character on this like path of conflict. And every episode ends with him reading a new chapter out of his dad's journal, basically, that he found in
Mm,
talking to his dad's ghost, that kind of thing. And it's him sort of like trying to figure out what happened while also taking down his stepfather, Clay Morrow, that kind of thing. and it's really well. Especially the first few seasons are like really well
Yeah.
done. I think after the first season or two, it moves away from it, but it is basically still what if Hamlet was a biker?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb here a bit and say, like, you could do Midsummer's Night Dream. Could make a pretty interesting. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a Soulsborne either. It could be anything really.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't. Oh, I mean, Treasure Island, I would do more like a, Horizon or a Rhyme
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something like that where you get to wander all over the island. A Treasure Island that is like the art style of Horizon, but done in like the style of Far Cry, where it's an open world island that you can go all over the place as you wish. Certain parts are harder and scarier than others. You know what I mean? Like you're, you're Jim Hawkins murking pirates and shit. That's
I
probably
mean,
too dark for a Treasure Island. Yeah, I don't.
is it?
I mean, it doesn't have to be, right? You don't have to make Jim Hawkins being a cabin boy, a 12-year-old. He doesn't have to sing any songs, you know?
Yeah.
Conversely, and granted, this wouldn't be public domain, you could just make a Muppet Treasure Island game, and that would bring a lot of joy to people. That
Yeah,
could just
that's
be
true
something that
too.
would make people happy, especially if you don't have Jim Hawkins the boy sing. It's
I
the worst part of
think
that movie.
I think it'd be fun if you did like a Hamlet game, and as DLC, hear me out. DLC for the Hamlet game is a Telltale style visual novel, but it's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern
Yes.
following the game like along like a big fourth wall sort of like it's DLC. You can consider it non-canon all you want, right? But like how wild would it be to have like a pretty serious Hamlet game and then there's this weird visual novel side thing of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
I mean, yeah, I'm into that. Uh, I mean, it's been done a million times, but you could do Romeo and Juliet as a game
You could
pretty easily.
that should be a strategy RPG.
It could be a strategy RPG. It could be an open world, game a la GTA style, but you could set it in Italy of the time. You could, you know what I mean? You could bring it up to modern times and have it be
go Leonardo DiCaprio, go
hell yeah. Baz Luhrmann,
Baz Luhrmann, sorry, yeah, like go
the
back,
best adaptation. It is the best
go full
adaptation.
Baz Luhrmann on it.
That is far and away my favorite adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, and I don't give a fuck.
Really?
Okay, yeah, that Mercutio, amazing, but also, God, what is it's John Leguizamo's character. He's the big bad of the Capulets. I'm blanking on his character's name, but God, his deliveries in that are so good. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet's the best Romeo and Juliet, and I don't give a fuck what anybody says.
I guess I don't. I mean,
I'm gonna have to bleep that.
I'm very much in the like. Sure, I'm like Romeo and Juliet to me has always like never been my big Shakespearean go to, if you will. Like obviously I'm aware of it, I know about it. I think I've seen I have seen stage play of, but like
I mean,
Hamlet's like there, like King. I think it's King Lear.
Hamlet and King Lear are the two.
Yeah,
I would say they are darker.
Oh, and Macbeth.
Macbeth is also.
Come on now. Macbeth would definitely be could be a cool game.
It depends on if you were trying to do the entirety of Macbeth's story. I don't know, maybe because if you were just doing it from his rise to power, it'd be a very cool action game,
right?
But if you did it in his if you started on his rise to power and had him do the murdering, and then it's just a horror game of him being haunted by ghosts.
Right?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. I don't know how long of a game.
That could be like a mid-game twist. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think Macbeth is like good for a Soulsborne, like in a way.
Where he's like literally fighting demons and
Yeah.
fighting his demons. That could be good. Yeah, because there's a lot of like murder and intrigue that happens in Macbeth. Like a lot
I
of
think
people
isn't
forget.
Macbeth the one you're not allowed to say the name of? I think that's the one you're not allowed to say the name of.
Maybe, I don't know. I wasn't a theater kid.
Oh.
So I don't know
I was a
necessarily.
film student, not a theater kid. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we were a totally different class of nerd. One, theater kids were getting laid on a level way more than
That's what I was
film
gonna say.
kids.
Aren't like theater kids like always?
Oh,
What?
dude, they party so hard. Like anybody who in high school was sitting there like, oh, look at that nerd. Like they were getting laid way more than like football players for damn sure. That I mean, granted, it was a very incestuous club, but like,
Yeah.
good God, theater kids were just that's crazy. There was this one theater kid that I remember. He had a full blown mullet, like short on the sides. This is like today, mullets are coming back in somehow, and so like I know Gen Z is like, yeah, fuck yeah, mullets are cool. But when I was in high school, mullets were like at the absolute trough of coolness. Like there was nothing cool about mullets. And there was this one dude who was in theater. He was also like he did all the music for like the live productions and stuff, I guess. Had a full blown mullet and just gave I don't want to cuss again. I'm trying to see how hard and I've already done it twice. Gave no F's. I'm an adult. Gave no fudges about it. And I remember like people would try to make fun of him or bait him into caring, and he just could not, like, did not. I think he also wore like fingerless gloves and like aviators to school. Like, what was going on with that 16-year-old where he was just like, I'm just going to live in the late 80s and I don't care. Like wore white blue
But
jeans.
theater kid, man, see he got all the action.
He was. I remember he was probably doing a hell of a lot better than anyone else. It's just I think when you go to college though, theater kids, like, it elevates a little bit. Like they become very serious about their craft. Not that they weren't serious about it in high school, but like when the person teaching you theater is like a high school level theater teacher, it's more about enthusiasm than about craft.
Right.
And then you get into college and all of a sudden, like, those theater kids, they might not be partying at all. They're like Olympians. They devote so much time to preparing. It's a different level. Maybe they're the ones with all the superstitions. I'm trying to think of, when's the last time you went to a play where you were just like, this is like, I like plays, but I think I saw like an Andrew Jackson musical at one point.
Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, it was a musical all about Andrew Jackson. And I was just like, okay.
Was it called The Trail of Tears?
No.
Probably not.
No, it was but it was a very I think that was where I was like, okay, musicals aren't for me.
Probably didn't have much to do with his killing of Native Americans, but did they at
It
least
did.
have
No, it did have a section of it. It also
did,
talked
did
about
it
like
did it at least go into him beating a man to death on the Senate floor with a stick?
that wasn't Andrew Jackson. That was
Old
the caning of Sumner.
It was Old Hickory, where it got its name.
He got his name as Old Hickory because he had no give. Because he'd go to battle over anything.
Oh, Andrew Jackson loved duels.
Yeah.
Loved him.
Yeah, and he had a whole bunch of blood diseases like hepatitis and all sorts of stuff from all of his battlefield wounds. He had like a lead ball that was like stuck in his ribs from a duel.
Yeah, he loved challenging people to a duel. No, he beat a man. He got an argument, and he beat a dude with his cane nearly to death.
Wow.
At some point in his political career.
The only famous caning I know was the guy the abolitionist who got caned almost to death on the Senate floor. So, but going back to public domain, like, that could be good for games. There is, I feel like the big one, you could have a really good Wolfman game. You could have a great Frankenstein game. You could have a fantastic Dracula game. Like there's so much. Like you just there's. I mean, I know Dracula's obviously been adapted and stuff, but like the point is like you could have. There's sections of it that would be good. Like it's
Yeah.
so rich that you could have like book accurate Dracula
Hmm.
is terrifying. Just like the vampire stuff that we've built around it. And this is more what I'm going to get into in the side quest later, with like zombies and stuff, but like we've deviated so much from the original stuff that the original stuff is actually more terrifying than what we have
Oh,
today.
absolutely. I think
Like
if you did not like at the beginning of the book, but like mid book to like later half of the book of Frankenstein, which
oh,
no
yeah,
one knows anything about the actual story because it's actually not a very long book.
right.
But
They
like
wrote it in a weekend.
there's the part where like the monster gets loose and then like he like blackmails him into creating like a bride for him
Hmm.
or whatever, but then like he disappears. And there's this whole thing where Victor basically is hunting down the monster. Like even the end of the
Right.
book, which ends in the Arctic. Like you could have there's a whole novel about like how like yeah, he's basically having to atone for his basically screw up and having trying to find and hunt down the monster he created, which
Who
is
just wants to be left alone.
who is actually sentient in the book
Yeah.
and speaks, and not just or whatever, but like nothing I actually want to take away because like yeah, especially Bride, that's a really good movie actually.
They're just not accurate to the source material at all.
No, you're not accurate at all. But like, man, a whole story about how like Victor basically going through Europe and Iceland, Greenland, like looking for this creature, and having to deal
Could
with
be
all the,
good, yeah.
that could be a great game actually.
One where you're playing as the creature, tormenting or trying to or being tormented and hunted by people. Like that's another one that you could do if you wanted to do a Souls-like game
Hmm.
there. Literally the monster fighting, pitchfork wielding villagers and stuff, There you go. There's your new Bloodborne. You're the monster trying to escape a city full of people trying to, a turn of the century city full of
Yeah,
people
and
trying to
and
kill him.
as long as he's not like green and like flat topped or whatever with the neck bolts, like because like he's actually described actually fairly differently in the book than how he's portrayed
Yeah,
by
he
Boris
he
Karloff.
looks like a man with like a lot of slapped together pieces. He's
Yeah.
not nearly as horrific as like
Hmm.
he is horrific, but it's more of like a subdued horror. It's not,
Yeah.
you know,
Which
um,
Souls are always known about. You're always playing as like a zombie usually in these Souls games
right.
too. So
Yeah, you could totally do a good Soulsy Frankenstein game. Um, but like a Wolfman game would be pretty great. Um,
yeah, well, there's then like the whole dealing with like the having a curse and like trying to
right.
fight it or whatever, and yeah.
Yeah, I there's I'm trying to think of like so now granted obviously this isn't public domain, but the original concept of the mummy from way back
Hmm.
in the day that is public domain. Like having a mummy being the villain and you're like a swashbuckling archaeologist type trying to prevent this mummy from coming back and taking
That's
over.
very Brendan. That's very much based on the Brendan Fraser because man, the
Well,
original Mummy movie is so different than
it
what I
is
was
it's
expecting.
much well, it's way slower too. Um,
Yeah,
but like doing a game like that would be really friggin' cool.
yeah,
But it
yeah.
isn't like you're right.
Because
It's the Brendan Fraser one's
the
not
Brendan
public domain.
Fraser one also really lends itself to a Bloodborne style because they're still using swords and they're also using pistols and whatever, but
Mhm.
it's not like hyper advanced machinery, right? I believe it's more like 1920s.
Well, it also feels like that's the biggest inspiration to Uncharted, right?
Yeah, right.
Like
Especially the
it's
character.
character design and character, like it's the biggest inspiration. So we already know that it works in an adventure setting too. Having a much more like grounded. I hate to do like a Last of Us 2 style combat where like it's much more brutal, grounded. You don't have all the resources to be doing like 100 shots because in Uncharted the 2 pistols that you use basically has unlimited ammo. Like
Yeah. Well, you know what I think could be a really fun sort of closer to more Metal Gear maybe than Last of Us, but also
yeah.
Last of Us. You know what else would be good? A Les Miserables,
Oh man,
like sort of Metal Geary, because the French Revolution, I believe, happens in the middle of that novel, if I
it's
remember right, or it's part of it. It's
well,
in
I
the
haven't read it in
background.
a long time, but yeah, it is the French Revolution is the backdrop to the novel because like two of
Yeah.
the main characters get killed horribly. Like it. God, you want to talk grimdark? Like, there you go. Lame as Rob.
But it could also be good because it could be like an 1800s political thriller.
It could. I don't know what you do necessarily for gameplay. Like, what would be the gameplay loop?
Because it wouldn't be trying to adapt the whole novel. It would be more of like the escape, and basically, you know, after the escape, and then like the police captain who's like relentlessly trying to hunt you down
Oh,
and
so you're
find
playing?
you.
Yeah, you're playing as Jean Valjean.
Jean Valjean. I was gonna say Jean Paul. I knew it was wrong.
Close.
Um,
I don't. I can't remember the name of the cop.
yeah, the one who kills himself at the spoilers, whatever.
Yeah, just ruined that for him.
Oops.
Famously played by Russell Crowe in the recent movie. Jean Valjean and God, yeah, having a Law and
I
Order
think it's an
obsessed.
L.
Yeah,
His name
I'm
begins
blanking.
not important, but the point is that like it would start with you getting like the actual getting out of jail. I think he gets out of prison because of the revolution. I think I'm not sure.
It's been so long since I've read it that I confuse a lot of it with the stage play
The musical.
and the musical that came after, and like the book, the actual book one is huge. It's massive. Um, is quite a bit different. Like there's quite a few pieces that are much here. Like the music
Yeah,
and everything
well,
is
I
pared
mean,
way
because like
down.
it's the whole thing about like how he stole bread because he was so poor and starving to try to feed his family, and then that ended up getting him sent to prison. And then in his escape attempts and whatever, he just ended up basically giving himself a life sentence. And then he gets out and he basically goes to try to find his daughter and like reconnect with his family. But like the police captain is so bloody obsessed with, you know, finding him, you know, like
Well,
this
he's
whole like
obsessed with Law and Order.
law, right? And then this backdrop of the French Revolution happening and all that stuff, and you know, the invention of the guillotine and yada yada. So I'm like, this would all make like a pretty great period piece style Metal Gear game. Like
It's
I'm thinking like more like maybe more like Metal Gear Solid 4 with its like different set pieces with like different gameplay hooks.
the reason that character ends it all is because he hits an unanswerable question for himself when he finally catches Jean Valjean and he realizes that he's hasn't been necessarily chasing justice, and then he has to confront the fact that law and order isn't necessarily what justice is, and he's been fighting for justice this whole time, and then he gets confronted by the fact that like, oh, that isn't necessarily justice, and he doesn't know how to confront it. So he doesn't.
He jumps, so he does. So he jumps in a river.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Well, the book's called Les Miserables, but I think a Metal Gear Solid style Les Mis game, and people are like,
I
oh,
could
you want a
see.
musical game? No, actually, I would rather keep it closer to the source material.
Although, I mean, that
If
would
you
be sort of
could,
cool.
if you could, I mean, if you could find a way,
Having like interludes and stuff with operatic singing.
that might also be kind of dope. You know, maybe, yeah,
They,
maybe.
you couldn't adapt the whole thing, obviously, for a lot of reasons, just because the whole section with what is her name, Fontaine, or
Mm.
God, that's
Right, because the thing is with video games and like with Lies of P, they're taking like
big liberties.
big liberties. Like Lies of P is not like
Yeah,
following any sort of specific storyline, and more as like it's taking the characters and putting them in their own story kind of thing. That's like it's more like true to the essence, if anything.
Right.
So things don't have to necessarily be 1-to-1. I'm not talking about 1-to-1 adaptations either
Yeah.
here. I have a big one. A big one for me. I want a gonzo balls to the wall platinum style action game based on Count of Monte Cristo.
You want that to be an action game?
Yes.
See, Count of Monte Cristo, I could see being a stealth
Well,
tactics.
because there is the whole thing where like he switches places in the body and gets himself thrown out of prison. But the whole
But he
second
does
half
a
of
lot
that
of swashbuckling, and he
that
does
the
a lot, yeah,
whole second half of that book is fucking it's
revenge and
revenge. Yeah,
yeah.
like revengeance. I want like a revengeance game. Like have the game set up where it's like, oh, you really hate, you hate the villain. And then it's just like this whole thing about like, getting back at him, getting out of prison, like going on a revenge spree.
and
Um,
ruining him and his co-conspirators. God, I'm gonna watch the Count of Monte Cristo or Count of Monte Cristo.
I'm just saying, Count of Monte Cristo. I want a really
Yeah.
wild and crazy action game, like a Metal Gear Rising, but like period piece style.
Well, like a really good Three Musketeers game would also be easy
Right.
to do
Also,
action.
it doesn't even need. And honestly, it doesn't even really need to be period because like Pinocchio doesn't technically take place in the same time or really period that the book was written in. So yeah, like for me, I'm like, you know what? Like it wouldn't even have to necessarily be at the same time and place as when the book of Count of Monte Cristo takes place, which I think was mid 1800s.
It takes place just after the French Revolution, or just after the uh after Napoleon gets deposed.
mm,
So it's the return to the monarchy, I think it was. Or,
yeah.
yeah.
All I'm saying is like, man, this could be such a cool action game. To have a Count of Monte Cristo like action, like full on like parries, big combos, like
Yeah, because he learns in prison. He learns how to, like, because you could do the prison section of it as the tutorial,
mhm.
because that's where he learns how to do everything that he does later, and then he joins a pirate crew and he's with them for several months.
Yeah.
It's like you could have some like real action swash. Actually, you could do it very much like an Assassin's Creed game too. Like
Yeah.
they could totally do that style of gameplay if you like that style of gameplay. Because he could do a lot of stealth and straight up
But
murder.
how great would it be if like, like you have the villain at the end and he has basically a whole speech about like empires and monarchies and whatever and
Oh
like
yeah.
having like have this whole
Oh
thing.
yeah. I actually, like, I'm super on board with this right now. Like I'm running away with it in my head how good it could be. Like you could do I you could do like you could do Soulsborne too with like parries and stuff, because
Mhm.
fencing would be exciting as hell
Fencing
if
is
you
yeah.
you know but you could also do that revengeance style running and gunning type sword play
Yeah.
with fencing too. That'd be really cool. I would dig that. Especially like you're right, you don't have to set it in that time period. Granted, I would like it in that time period because I like that time period. Just historically from like aesthetics, but also the history of that period was like
Yeah.
there was so much turmoil. And we're living through it again now.
And again, it
Yay.
doesn't have to be strict 1-to-1. So like you can really expand the pirate years or whatever.
Right.
And like, oh, they go to these different islands or they go to different places, and he has run-ins with like the main villain or other villains, there, or it's maybe like some warden in the jail, like he meets him like later on in life, running some prison colony or something.
You do it almost. You could steal this from like Final Fantasy 16, where you have it in sections,
Yeah.
where it's like you have the prison section and then it cuts ahead a few years and he's been with pirates, and you have the pirate section that translates into him finally deciding to begin, and then you have his adult section where now he's like 40 and he's got the wind blasted hair and the look of a swashbuckler and a
Yeah.
merchant, and like then you have the revenge section, And it's like, oh man, I'm actually so on board with this. Wait, what devs do we know we can?
Platinum, I guess, maybe.
Kami is gone.
Kami is gone.
Is Platinum going to be the same without him?
It depends on how much Takahashi Tara can step up in his place, and if Saito and Tara, basically like the guys who did Revengeance in Nier, if they can hold it down, maybe
They'll still exist.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on what is it that Kamiya could not reconcile with the upper management,
right?
And was it the push for live service? Because if the push for live service is what did it, I don't know how much longer Platinum survives without,
Yeah, part of me also, I thought about this later, where it's just like, you might have just been bored too. Might have just been bored. So many of the things, especially in a creative field of any kind, when you do one thing, they make you do that thing until it's dead because they don't think you can do anything else. And I think that's something that, like, Mikami, for instance, also complained about.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's all Capcom wanted him to do. So it could be that too, where he was just like, I'm done here and I'm going to go try and do something new. But anyway, back to God, what's all right, we're talking about Soulsborne. If you were going to have FromSoft, now granted, we both don't like their controller, how their combat works, because their controls feel loose to us.
Yeah.
We'll put that asterisk so that someone who loves it won't get mad. If FromSoft was going to make any, IP, what would it be?
FromSoft making an IP, I think a fun one would be Wizard of Oz.
Oh, okay. Get real dark with Wizard of Oz, though.
Yeah.
And then is Dorothy a warrior, or is it like FromSoft doing like a Forspoken?
No. More from
Forspoken.
Way more like of a Demon Souls, Dark Souls style, or Sekiro style, or something.
Okay.
Definitely not the other way. No, not Forspoken.
There's got to be so many like public domain properties that would, because a lot of stuff, like having like a Huck Finn or any of Edgar Allan Poe's stuff adapted,
Edgar Allan Poe would be good for maybe making a horror, one of those like combatless horror.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God! At the Mountains of Madness or whatever.
Oh yeah.
From Lovecraft, it's like, just man, like the Antarctic expedition that discovers the ancient city buried under the ice there, and I'm shocked. And that one's more of like a shock. How has nobody done this yet? Like just a straight, like, straight up at the Mountains of Madness.
Lovecraft has gotten, so there's been some Lovecraftian games, but one thing that, like, cosmic horror is so hard to do because how do you instill, like, the whole point of cosmic horror is to, like, instill you with an absolute fear of the magnitude that you don't know, of like the unknown.
Yeah.
Which, when you know that Lovecraft himself was a horrendous xenophobe who was terrified of invading cultures, the unknown, essentially, like, it makes a lot of sense that that's why his themes were that way. And separating the art from the artist for a minute, the whole point of, like, his fear of gods and unknown, of overwhelming force, is that it drives you mad. How do you instill madness? And part of me is like, Soma, sort of like that kind of game. Soma sort of goes for it. What is it? Abyss would be another one that sort of goes for it. How do you bottle that?
You have to make things.
It just becomes a monster horror otherwise.
Yeah, well, you have to just kind of like make things cryptic, really, and try to, like. That's a tough thing to do. Is like, have a gameplay design or a creature or an encounter that isn't fully revealed and is like hidden, throughout like a whole course of a game. And then maybe even try to
Right.
do it where like you don't really ever know. Like you're never gonna get it. Because the thing and the problem too is people will just data mine shit.
Right.
They're like, oh, I'm gonna pull the file, I'm gonna pull the whatever the the character render out of here. And so like there's always people who are gonna kind of like spoil the fun there. Uh and that's kind of the unfortunate thing, but maybe that's something you have to like think about and work around. Maybe you never have a fully rendered complete form of anything you encounter in the game. It's always just pieces.
What's the one that probably did it the best is Machine for Pigs. Like that.
Amnesia.
Yeah, Amnesia is probably not Abyss. I said
Mhm.
Abyss earlier. Amnesia is probably the one that's done it the best. But is Amnesia and Amnesia Machine for Pigs different games? It is, right?
Yeah.
I think I only played Machine. I either played both or I only played one, but I streamed both of them. And I
Mhm.
think I said at the time that I was streaming, I was like, this is probably the best cosmic horror
Mm.
has ever been distilled. And it's not technically cosmic horror, but it does that similar. It tries to get you to feel those same feelings as a
Yeah.
cosmic horror story. I've thought
Mhm.
about for a long time, like, how do I adapt cosmic horror to film? Because it's not an easy thing to capture because in a lot of ways nothing's happening.
You have to look at stuff like Arrival
You
or
know,
The
it's the
Mist or
implications.
something.
Mist does pretty good. Arrival, yeah, I guess sort of touches on it, but it's not really a horror.
Annihilation.
Annihilation, yeah, Annihilation kind of gets it there. But like, if you picked a single movie to like be like, this is a cosmic horror movie, I don't know what you would say to like. I don't know. All right, so any last public domain that you're like, this would make such a good game. I want to see it.
Yeah, I had some, it'd be really fun if someone, can you imagine if someone attempted to have, like a tactics ogre or maybe more ogre battle style, the adaptation of War and Peace. Could you imagine someone like going for that?
Have you ever read War and Peace?
No.
I think I've read 5 pages of that. You
I
know,
love Leo Tolstoy. There was a point in time where I was in school where we were doing like, we were reading short stories from all these different famous authors. And I remember I always enjoyed Leo Tolstoy's work, which is really weird.
yeah. Well, actually,
Yeah,
it sort of makes
I don't know if it's weird or not, but I'm just like, I enjoy his work. I thought his work was good.
no, it makes sense why you would like a Russian writer because everything the Russians write are terribly grim, dark, and sad.
I don't. That's not me.
But you love a good sadness. You
No,
do. You love good, sad, dark endings. Like you love a sad ending.
no, that's not true.
You like bleak.
No, I don't
Your
believe
favorite
this.
color is actually gray, not blue.
No,
It's a grayish blue.
none of this is true.
Your favorite. That's why you love Antarctica and cold weather so much.
Oh, I hate it.
I I mean I know that.
It's terrifying.
That's why polar bears are your favorite because they live out there in the freezing
Ugh.
gray bleakness.
There you go. Make a game. Make a game based off the real life Lost Expedition of the Terror.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, I feel like they've done that. Have they? I think they've done that. Although there's a mini series that's about
Yeah.
the bear that is
Yeah, very good.
amazing.
So-
There's a game about the Russian mountaineers that went missing in the Ural Mountains. I think it is. I'm trying to remember what that's called, but it is actually pretty creepy. The story surrounding that. The
Hmm.
game is good for about 2 hours, I think, that I spent on it, and then it starts to get really kind of like boring. It's sort of like replaying a game that has absolutely no combat at all. The next time you go through it, you're just kind of like, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think now, like a good. Oh, it'd be it's not public domain, but you could do a really good horror game about that castle in uh it's in Eastern Europe, but
Oh,
it was this pit in the ground, and the castle's built around the pit, and no one knows what the hell it was for, except that all of the castle's defenses are facing inward toward the pit. And so it's a castle that has no defenses outward. It's just defending into the pit. Personally, I like the theory that it is like it was a penal colony. But like there's really like no one's done any research into what's at the bottom of the pit as far as I know. Maybe now that's not true anymore. But I remember as a kid
right.
I read a little like article snippet on it, and forever I thought like why would you build a
Yeah,
Middle
well,
Ages?
there's definitely some
There's something there, right?
fun theory crafting you could do there for sure.
I wrote an opening scene to a movie once in college about that idea. And so I feel like there's something there where it's like, oh, you could do something real good
You know
there.
what I would like to see, if
Hmm.
since we're kind of moving away from novel to like maybe even realism. You know what would be a fun game if you got a big enough budget?
A game about spelunking.
Lewis and Clark, the Lewis and Clark expedition. Like have a game, you have Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea, and then oh god, there's the quote unquote bodyguard whose name escapes me. He had a really fun time in the Dakotas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they're calling him a bodyguard though. That was
I'm
what's his name?
no, what was oh god. Anyways, not the point is a game that's all about just you're going into the unknown,
Mhm.
like uncharted wilderness for Lewis and Clark, anyways. And you've just been commissioned to go there. Sacagawea is your guide, basically, and you are discovering basically like the great American outdoors or wilderness.
So you're
Um,
saying it would start later in their expedition after they had met Sacagawea?
right, because she wasn't there from the start, so
Right.
I
They
think it would.
they negotiate for her to be because
Mhm.
she was from a rival clan or
Yeah,
tribe, and then her husband is who ends up, or it's her brother. I'm blanking on that. Yeah, as long as we have a section where Clark gets pissed that a tribe of Indians stole Seaman, his Newfoundland hound, and so he storms the tribe. He
there's
grabs a
so
bunch of
many
dudes and rifles
there's so many weird things that happened on that expedition.
to rescue his dog. God. That was I went to a wedding in Missouri, and they had the place where the wedding was at was in the jump off point for the start of their
Mhm.
expedition. And so they had a museum dedicated to them that had like replicas of the boats they took and all this stuff.
Mhm.
Really, really cool. If you're ever in St. Charles, Missouri, go to the Lewis and Clark Museum. It's a cool little $5.
I think maybe what would be better than Lewis and Clark necessarily is take the idea of it, put it in a space game where you've landed on a new planet, like a call, like you know,
Mm,
you're landing on like a new planet that you're looking for the new home for humanity or something, right? And
yeah.
you have to go and you have to lead an expedition through an uncharted wilderness of a new planet.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I would
That'd
dig
be
that.
fun because that way you can kind of avoid a lot of the sort of messiness of
Um,
how messed up we you know us how we could have been, I just what I'm saying, just like kind of like yeah, let's take the idea of this and make it something,
I
you
mean, I
know
don't. I think part of the reason why the Lewis and Clark expedition mattered was because of how accurate a picture it painted of various facets of our society at the
mhm.
time. Um, Especially considering that, like, if you don't read anything about it, people make this mistake of thinking that natives were like this monolith and they weren't
Right,
competing
no,
nations that were
no,
pulling all their
yeah,
own
yeah,
dirty tricks. And then, like,
absolutely,
here's
yeah.
these dudes trying to be like, oh, we're just trying to go down the Missouri River,
That's
guys.
that's that's the thing. A lot of people think it's like, oh,
Right?
they raid into the natives and like the natives, and it's like, there were like dozens,
Hundreds. There were
you know.
hundreds of tribes,
Well,
nations,
there was,
dozens of nations.
but nations. There were dozens of like. Have you ever seen like the map breakdown? It's
Yeah.
actually pretty cool
Yeah,
about
it is very cool.
how the original tribal nations broke down across the whole continental, North American continent. And it's actually kind of like, oh, that's actually kind of neat and interesting. It's like looking at this like what if, scenario. What if this was how the countries were separated. I mean, imagine that if those were the countries of North America.
If you,
like,
if
I mean,
you,
they were the countries of North America in a sense.
right.
You know what I mean? But like, what if in today's time that was the literal borders, of
Yeah, it'd be pretty wild.
right? Wouldn't that be kind of maybe there's an idea right there. What about an alternate history game where the Pilgrims sunk, and the colonists just sort of like packed up and went back home?
You don't even need to do alternate history. You just do the French and Indian War.
You could do that, but I'm just saying, like, what if it was like we do this alternate history where the original native nations are the countries of North America, and like that is your backdrop setting, about it, and it's like, what if you did it? Like, I don't know what the plot would be. It could be something like you have to escort someone across, this here to there or whatever, or
That's
something
sort of
like
what
that.
they did with Horizon, though, right? Where they were just like they took that sort of concept and posted it into a post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like that's kind of how that is very much how Horizon plays out.
A lot of it is their inspiration, yeah.
But like not post-apocalyptic, I guess is what I'm saying. Where it's like, what if it was just like America was the original native nations and they stayed as they were, they grew, they got technology, they basically are their own countries the way they are now. And I don't know.
Comanche would be terrifying.
Could you imagine where it's just like, oh, you had best be on your best behavior here.
They would be very scary.
Yeah, your best behavior here, or else, or Apache and we're no joke either.
None of them were a joke. But as always, we've got some producers to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Due to the week with Stealthy Goats. And our producers for this episode are Mutton Chops Johnson, the Schmidt One, Screwnami, Kroy35, Hyper Viper 89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes. We'll catch you next time.
Later, dudes.